there was a really bad smell on the street. And finally we kind of pinpointed it to a car that was parked there. It had been there for a while. And it seemed like it was coming from inside the car. So we alerted one of the neighbors there, and they called the police. And our friend was in the back trunk. Yeah. So that dinner happened, and I'm driving home, and I was like, oh my God, I think I'm engaged. So I said, what do I do? So I called my parents up. I called my mom up, and I said, hey, Mom, I think I'm engaged. And she goes, to who? And all I could give her was, remember a long time ago when that girl dropped me off that one time? And she said, you're engaged to a girl that dropped you off? I said, no, Mom, I've known her all through dental school and stuff like that.
And is the timeline still like you've only been
5 days?
That's awesome.
And my parents work fast, like he said, and so they were like, hey, while we're here, let's just meet your
knock it
parents.
out. So they said, let's meet your parents. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and you said you sit in on the board for...
I do. So I sit on the Hilton True Owners Advisory Council. I've been on there since, I want to say 2018 or 2017. And then I sit on the Motel 6 Studio 6 board, Owner Advisory Council too. I still think I'm the only female on the True one.
True side, yeah.
So impressive.
I think for G6 I was the first female.
Wow.
Have you ever considered leaving a safe, stable, predictable environment to pursue your dreams or chase what is meaningful to you? Today's guests, Raj and Toral, exhibit grit at the highest level despite two very different upbringings, and a decade ago left a career in the medical field to run their own hotels here in Austin. Be sure to like and subscribe so that we can continue to bring more stories like these to you. And here's Raj and Toral's story.
You guys are like two of the hardest working, high achieving, busy people. And I always am curious, sitting on the other side of somebody with your grit, your intentionality. I always get curious about 0 to 18 to be like, there's a nature and nurture side. The nature side, don't have a lot of impact on, but the nurture side, how did you develop into who you guys are today? And you guys actually have very different 0 to 18s, right? Which I'm super curious about.
Came together,
Right. Yeah, and now it's such an incredible pairing. So, Raj, maybe if we want to start with you, what was childhood like for you, and where would you start your story?
Well, my parents came from India. I was born in 72. My brother was born in 74. Shortly after that, finances became a problem. So they took us to India for school.
Yeah.
So from 5 to 6 years old, my brother and I were both basically in India while they were getting settled over here. So getting used to life in India for that 1 year was definitely a change.
Yeah.
I mean, at 5 years old,
Wow.
It's like you build that bond with your parents and then you're separated.
Yeah, without them, right?
And without even any family, because we went to a boarding school there. So grandparents, nobody really around, And here we are, two English-speaking kids in a school which spoke the Indian language. So definitely tough.
Yeah, wow.
And then also at that time, I had to become almost like the head of the household. It was just me and my brother.
Wow.
And at 5 and taking care of a 3-year-old, it was definitely difficult. And when you couldn't even really talk and you had no support from any family members because you really didn't see them throughout the year until basically the school year was done.
Right.
That's the only time you saw them. So that year was just jam-packed with events and just uncomfortable situations.
Sure.
But it made me grow up real fast.
Yeah.
You didn't have anybody to coddle you.
Yeah.
So by the time I came back at 6 years old, I felt that I was a lot more mature. I was a lot older than, I felt older than what I should be.
Sure.
And I didn't know this until I went to school.
Yeah. It was your normal.
Right? Yeah, I went to, first grade and 6 years old and just like, the kids are talking about certain things and I was like, wow.
Yeah.
I felt like I was doing that at 3.
Yeah. So what was the transition back like for you? Was that easier back here or?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you go from a tougher environment to, coming from India to America, you start feeling grateful, because in that short time that I was in India, I felt like I didn't really remember what I had in America.
Yeah.
And you appreciate a lot more the opportunities, just the ease of everything.
Yeah.
Having a mom and dad.
Yeah.
You know.
And what was your relationship like with both of them young?
Oh, my parents?
Yeah.
Oh, it was awesome. I mean, my dad worked 2 jobs.
Okay.
So pretty much growing up, my mom was like mom and dad. My dad would come home from his day job and eat dinner, and still, you know, he'd take a nap for 3-4 hours. And since I was the oldest, I was responsible for waking him up to go to his night job. And that was always a 15-minute ordeal, because you wake him up and you come, leave the room, and he's sitting at the side of the bed, you know, kind of stuff. They were still asleep, and you know, just seeing all that, and how hard they worked, and they were doing it for us, because my parents didn't really live with any luxuries or anything like that. It was just whatever was needed to live, and whatever was needed us to educate us, and that's where all the money went.
Okay. So tell me about when things started to get chaotic for you then, because you shared some stories that I think are important to who you are today that you experienced.
So we moved from Virginia to Maryland, and by this time I've got 3 brothers. So once again, my dad was working nights, so I was kind of at that point the man of the house.
Yeah.
You know, I took care of everything. I'm the one that, even during holidays, Christmas, things like that, it was me that was providing for my brothers and those experiences. My parents really didn't understand Christmas and, you know, these holidays, and I didn't really experience it, but I wanted my brothers to. So, especially my 2 younger ones. So, you know, and the neighborhood that we moved into was a really rough one as well. It was a drug-infested type community.
I think you mentioned like everybody on your block that you were friends with died.
Well, no, so many. I mean, I think maybe 10 to 11 of our friends that we grew up with, and it wasn't natural causes by any means. It was tragic type things, you know?
Yeah.
And for me to think that myself and my 3 brothers, that we escaped from that community, I mean, that was just amazing.
Yeah.
You know?
I think you were sharing, like you were 9 or 10 or something when you had lost one of your friends.
Yes, well, one of our friends was missing for a while.
Yeah.
And we played football religiously. That's what we did. We did our homework. As soon as we finished, we were outside playing football. And I was a little bit older than most of them. So everybody would wait for me. I was the organizer. You know? So I'd get out there. And and then, you know, we were missing one of our friends for almost 3-4 days. And there was a really bad smell on the street. And finally, we kind of pinpointed it to a car that was parked there, and it had been there for a while. And it seemed like it was coming from inside the car. So we alerted one of the neighbors there, and they called the police. And our friend was in the back trunk. Yeah. And 9 or 10, that's what I was, I think. And seeing that.
So I feel like he just had to grow up hearing all this.
Yeah.
He just had to grow up really quick.
Right. Yeah. I don't even have a category for that, you know, at any age, honest. I mean, but, you know,
but
at 9 or 10,
I still think that just being in India is like I was. I mean, I don't know how a normal, when I say normal, I mean somebody that grew up here, a 10-year-old would handle that. But for me, it was just like, reality as far as, you know, getting into drugs, and this is kind of what happens. Like that's the way I was processing it at that time.
Yeah.
And my goal was, oh my God, there's no way I can let my brothers get into any of this kind of stuff.
So what did middle school, high school look like for you? How are you?
So we moved out of that neighborhood.
Yeah.
We moved into a better neighborhood. But middle school and high school, it was all about school. That's it. I mean, my parents, especially my dad, was so focused on us doing well. And we had a lot of family friends who had kids that were older than me. And my parents, I think they saw what happened if kids were given too much freedom as far as social.
Yeah.
And so they held on to us really tightly. And for Indian parents, us all being boys and not girls, it was a little odd. They're typically strict with boys, but my parents were especially strict with us, especially my dad. You know, even from a social aspect, we couldn't get any calls at home. I mean, between the hours of like 6 and 9, if the phone never rang, my brother and I would both clamp up, and it's like we'd look at each other and say, "That's for you." No, it's not for me. I told everyone, don't call me. That's for you.
Yeah.
And that moment when my father and mom would pick up the phone and say hello, because it was always like that.
Yeah.
We just we'd be frozen to sleep. And as soon as we found out I was one of their friends, we were like, oh my God. So it was strict. But, you know, for me, it was never about pleasing my parents.
Okay.
I just came to a point where I had to be the best at what I did.
Yeah.
And that's it. It just had, and not necessarily against other people, but just knowing that I did the best I could do.
Yeah.
I didn't leave anything on the table.
Yeah.
Then when I got to high school, it was a little bit of a shock because I was surrounded by, it was a magnet program where you had to take exams to get into school.
Yeah.
And the amount of brilliance there was just, it was really tough for me because right up until that point, I was always number one.
Yeah.
And I wasn't anymore.
Yeah.
You know, and did the best I could do.
Yeah.
You know, I gave it all I got, and then I don't look back. And that mentality is what made me think now. It's like there's always going to be people better than you, you know, wealthier than you, this and that, and you can't be dissatisfied. Yeah. But for me, I can only be satisfied if I've given it everything I got, physically, mentally, financially, you know, spiritually, whatever it is. I'll put it on the table, and then I don't look back.
Yeah.
You know, so that's kind of the way I deal with things these days.
Yeah. Well, I love that you spoke to like the work ethic piece, because that's an interesting shock for people when they've been successful in an area and then they look up around them and everybody is, you know, and you're not alone in that. Now, what do you do?
It is.
And for some people, that is like a moment where they get off because it's like.
And I think that's a big thing for kids because.
And for adults.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, and with the parents also. I mean, they put so much pressure on the kids, and all of a sudden they're used to their son being number one all the time, and all of a sudden they're not. You know, it's tough.
Yeah.
And especially coming from, you know, Indian families. You always hear about the Indian families. You get 98 on an exam, they always ask where the other 2% went. And they never focus in on what you got. It's always, where's the rest of it?
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. It makes a lot of sense. What about you? If we were to switch for a second, because we said you guys had very different upbringings. So.
Polar opposite. So I have an older sibling, an older sister.
Okay.
2 younger brothers, so I'm middle child. Classic middle child syndrome. I grew up, I was born and raised in Dallas, grew up there. My dad came here before he married my mom, so he actually went to Stanford, Johns Hopkins, incredibly intelligent, boy genius.
Yeah.
And he learned, I believe, his work ethic from his dad, who was a professor in India. And he came here, went to school, went back to India, married my mom. All 4 of us were born and raised in Dallas.
Okay.
And I lived in a bubble. My dad used to work for Braniff, but he wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I don't know if you know this, but a good number of hotel motels in the country are owned by Patels, which is my type of Indian. And we lived in the motel, and my dad simultaneously worked for Braniff Airlines. And, you know, my mom would be at the property running it while he was at work. Then he would come home, be the maintenance man. My mom would be the housekeeper, and so they sort of tag teamed it, and it was like a 2-man show.
Yeah.
But that's how most Indians did it. By the time I was, you know, old enough to remember, I was in a gated community, grew up around a ton of family, and that was my network. That was my community. My parents were strict, for sure, especially with my sister and I. My parents worked really hard to sort of shield us from their success and their wealth. And so I never really knew what their status was until I moved away for college, and then I was from the outside looking in.
Okay.
But my upbringing was nothing like his.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so that kind of like grit, drive, work ethic, is that something that you have always had as well, like as far as you can remember? Okay.
No, in fact, you know, people who knew me growing up are probably like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you worked so hard. I think for me, things kicked into gear. The day we got married was the day I was cut off from financial stability,
Sure.
if you will.
Yeah.
And, you know, I remember thinking, like, why are my parents doing this to me? Like, I don't understand, you know? And in hindsight, it was probably one of the best things that they did do for us.
Wow.
And when we first got married, he was a new dental graduate. I was a PA in plastic surgery, and we both worked really hard. And we had, you know, a tiny, like 700 square foot apartment that we shared with his dog that was 80 pounds.
Yeah.
And, you know, it really gave me a reality check. It jolted me in a good way.
Yeah.
And
Overnight.
I came in with a lot of debt as well, with other things. So together, we had to chisel away at that as well. So that's kind of when it really hit me. For me, I never even would think about how I'm going to get rid of this debt.
Yeah.
And that's something she's not used to at all.
Yeah.
I just figured that I'm going to keep on working. I have to do what needs to be done. And it's the mentality my parents had too. I mean, if a loan needed to be taken for something for school, well, you have to do it.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what
Understood.
interest rate was until I got married.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
World. Yeah.
And you know, when he came in with credit card debt, I'm like, what does this mean? Like, why didn't you just pay it?
Yeah.
And, you know, so many things. So my hard work and grit kicked in the day we got married.
Yeah. And how old were you guys when you got married?
23, 24?
Yeah.
I was 29.
Yeah.
So you're 25.
Yeah.
25?
24.
24. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, even that though, that part of the story to be like, you're an adult at that point. That's not, you know, I think sometimes people might have this belief of, if I'm not that way, if I wasn't born that way, if I haven't always been, whereas like for you, like, no, it's a decision. Like I get to, you know, and you had your upbringing that you can, you know, now point back to and so on, but you're like, no, this is something that's going to change.
But I was,
so,
you know, an average kid. My older sister was straight A. My younger brother was straight A.
Yeah.
I was the average kid. I was the one who wanted to always go and socialize and, you know, have fun. And, but for me, my advantage was I can say with some confidence that I'm very good with people. And I'm just an outgoing person in that respect. So I think that's worked to my advantage a lot.
Sure.
And growing up, my dad encouraged me and my sister to go into medicine, just so we have something to fall back on that's stable if, God forbid, things didn't work out for us in the future. My younger two brothers were pushed into the family business of hotels and banking. And ironically, both my sister and I have given up our PA careers and we're both into hotels. I felt like I was just going through the motions. I go to work 9 to 5, did the usual things, and I maxed out. I have published chapters in books. I taught across the country. My specialty was lasers and skincare, and my surgeon that I worked with is a Duke alumni, and so he's very much into doing a lot of research. So I've even co-published articles with him doing research.
Very cool,
And my dad, you know, early on said, hey, so, you know, Raj, Thorol, do you want to get into the family business, like motels? And Raj is like, no, Dad, like I went to medical school. Like I got my butt kicked in medical school. Like I went through all this hard work. I'm good. And for me too, I never really thought I would go into the hotel industry, as most of the children who grew up with hotel parents, if you had asked us at a younger age, most of us probably said like, oh, I'm not going to do the hotel motel thing.
Because they lived in it.
You know, ironically now the majority of us are.
Wow. Well, I want to focus on the hotel switch, but if I could almost rewind for a second and where y'all's stories merge. Did you guys meet in college? Is that right?
We did.
Or was it okay? So
in
how did y'all end up finding each other?
I was in dental school. She was in PA school at the time at Howard University in DC. We had a lounge space that kind of both colleges kind of share. The PA students. It was a dental lounge, and so the PA students would come in there between classes. Just to kind of hang out and stuff. And so she saw me in there, and at that time, I had sciatica, really bad for my first 2 years. So I was sprawled out on a couch in there. Every time she saw me, I'd be sprawled out on the couch. And she's like, who's this guy? Thinks he owns the lounge, taking up 7 people's seating spaces and stuff. So that was her first vision of me.
My first impression was like, who's this arrogant guy?
So she warmed up to me one day, and she came over and just said that, hey, there's this Indian party going on somewhere. And I said, yeah, maybe I'll come. So I went with one of my friends, and that's where I saw her and her cousins. And from there, friendship That's what it was. It was totally like that.
We were friends for 4.5 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Quite some time.
And when did you guys know, like, okay, now it's time to be more than friends?
Well, so she was moving away.
Okay.
So she was,
Yeah.
she
I
got accepted.
graduated.
She
Okay.
graduated. She got
moved
accepted a
to-
position in California.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I went to go live with my sister.
Okay.
And
Before she left, she kind of said to me, "Hey, is there any chance of a future
Yeah.
with you and I?" And I still had a year and a half of dental school left.
Okay.
So I didn't know. I had no idea. And she's going over to California. So I knew that if I said, yeah, there's a possible chance and everything, I knew she would hold on
Yeah.
and hold on to that. So in my head, I was just like, okay, look, this is my decision now. She's put it in my court. If I need to change my mind, I need to go find her
Yeah.
and then ask for her
Yeah.
to come to me.
Yeah.
So we went on. She moved away. I told her, look, go live your life. I said, be selfish, take care of yourself. I've got to finish dental school, and that's it. And that's how I left it.
Right.
And so we didn't talk for a year and a half. It was quite some time.
it's about a year.
Yeah, and then we got in touch with her sister because we realized it was her birthday in California. So me and my best friend, we kind of arranged it with her sister to make her think that her brother was flying in.
Okay.
So Thorol came to pick me up, me and my best friend at the airport at nighttime. It was like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, and it was us.
Okay.
She thought it was her brother she was picking up.
Okay.
So that's what happened. And that weekend, I saw her with all her friends, guys that were just, gawking over and everything. And I don't get jealous often, and I did. And it struck a chord in me, and I said, well, what's this feeling?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's when I realized it. And anyway, long story short, we started dating
Yeah.
at that time. And shortly thereafter, somehow her parents found out. And it wasn't very long at all.
Okay.
Oh, it was like less than a week, 5 days or something.
Maybe 5 days. It was very quick. They work fast.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they have to make a mystery trip up to
DC.
DC.
Uh-huh.
And they heard about me, so they contacted me and they said, hey, we're going to be in DC. We'd like to do dinner with you.
Okay.
I said, wow, okay. This is a little
That's fast.
scary. It's just
Yeah.
me, right? So we went to an Indian restaurant. I still remember eating, and all of a sudden, Thorol's dad, the banker that he
The
is,
numbers guy.
Uh-huh.
he puts his plate down. He says, okay, how many percentage points are you sure of, you and Thorol? so I still remember eating his shrimp, and I started laughing. And I looked at him, and he was just looking at me straight in the eyeballs. So I put the shrimp down. I said, oh, this is serious.
Yeah.
so I basically just told him, look, I need to finish school. I really liked Thorol, a lot. And at that point, I knew who they were in society, their wealth, what they've amassed, this and that. And seeing where I came from as a family, my biggest fear was always going into another family where they were so much more well off than we were. And then how would they view, not so much me, but my parents? And I expressed that to them. I said, there's no way that I can even enter, because in India culture, which is a lot of cultures, it's marriage of families, not just of individuals. So that was very important to me. So I told them, I said, I can never marry into a family where my parents would be made to feel, inferior in any way, because they don't have anything monetary. Their riches are us four boys. That's it. That's all they worked towards. I mean, they poured everything into it, So after telling this story, her mom just broke down crying, and just that was a true moment for me, because I wasn't used to seeing people that were successful being so vulnerable either. And I always had this vision that people that had money, they just acted a certain way, and they looked down upon people that didn't. So that kind of opened my eyes at that point. So that dinner happened.
Sounds
and
really powerful, yeah.
yeah, so we finished, and I'm driving home, and I was like, oh my God, I think I'm engaged. So I said, what do I do? So I called my parents up. I called my mom up, and I said, hey, Mom, I think I'm engaged. And she goes, to who? And all I could give her was, remember a long time ago when that girl dropped me off that one time? And she said, you're engaged to a girl that dropped you off one time? I said, no, Mom, I've known her all through dental school and stuff like that. So next night, I have to put a meeting together for the families to meet, my parents and her parents. All this time she's in California, so she has no idea any of this. Even at the first night transpired, how it went.
And is the timeline still like you've only been
5 days?
That's awesome.
And my parents work fast, like he said, and so they were like, "Hey, while we're here, let's just meet your parents."
Knock it out. So they said, "Let's meet your parents." Oh my gosh! So we went to another Indian restaurant, a vegetarian restaurant. My parents and her parents, and the way that her parents embraced my parents. I mean, it was amazing to me.
Still to this day,
I felt like I was just sitting there, just watching. You know, it was like a good ending in like a movie or a TV show or something like that. And after we finished that, once again, realization is like, oh my gosh, I think I am engaged. And so now my mom has to take the next step. She calls Thorold in California. The first thing she says is, congratulations.
Yeah.
So she's like, wait, who is this? She's like, you're marrying my son. He said, who's your son? He says, Raj. And so that's how it started. So we literally got engaged 5 days after we started dating. And we took a year engagement. I was finishing dental school. But so it was...
I don't know if that's a blueprint you can follow or not. I mean, sort of every great love story.
Well, we were such
you're
good
laying
friends.
on a couch,
we
you're
knew
like, everything's there again. You fight at a bar, and then you get engaged after 5 days. That's like...
That's it.
I love that.
The Indian version of speed dating.
It's amazing. I love that story. I hadn't heard that ahead of time either, so that's amazing. So if we were to fast forward then from there, you guys both enter your respective career paths. You're both super successful, but also reach this point of like, what's next, or what else is there for me? And then you do a whole major career change. So talk me through that season. I mean, you talked about the questioning of it, but was there fear involved? Were you worried like this is a whole new world, a whole new venture,
I definitely have to attribute that to Thorold's dad, because for me, once I became a dentist, I worked for someone, and I was content. You know, he's the one who kind of inspired me to open up my own dental practice. And again, the fear of the unknown. You know, I mean, simple things like how do you start a credit card terminal? How does just simple things, not dentistry. Dentistry's no problem.
Right.
It's all the business aspect. They don't teach you that in dental school.
When I sit back and I think about it, that's where my dad said something that still strikes a chord. As long as you're educated, it doesn't matter what you're educated in. As long as you're educated, you've exercised your brain enough to where you could teach yourself anything, especially in this day and age and the resources that you have. It's conditioned. You could teach yourself.
So this is after I opened my dental practice. And I ran my own dental practice. Finally, after I think 4 years of it being open, he had come there. He had come visit a few times. And that's when he started talking to us about getting into hotels. Again, we were both under the premise that we're medicine. That's all we've done. That's what we studied for. We don't want to do this stuff, And then as I went back to Dallas, I used to see their family. I mean, they enjoy like 4 or 5 days out of the week, having a good time, because they've done the hard work, established these hotels, and now it's running, on cruise control so much.
Right.
So then he hit me with an analogy that I still tell so many people. He said, take your dental practice. He said, think of it as a money wheel. He said, when you clock in at 8:30, that money wheel starts to rotate. He said, when you clock out at 5, the money wheel stops. He said, you need a money wheel that's revolving for you all the time, while you're sleeping, while you're away on vacation. And, in definition, exactly what a hotel does. 365 days a year, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Wow. We're sitting here doing this interview, and it's making money for us. So it took us a while to learn that.
Not always making money.
Well,
Potentially.
So it took us a while to understand that. I think about a year and a half still, 2 years. And then we finally got the opportunity in Austin.
So my mom's idea. There was a property that came up in Austin, and it was under foreclosure.
Okay.
And my mom's like, hey, this is a good opportunity. It's, relatively inexpensive property in Austin, in Runberg, of all places.
Okay, yeah.
But living in Virginia, we didn't really understand how bad Runberg was, at the time. And while we both continued our full-time jobs, we invested in this foreclosed property, and we hired a manager, who is fantastic, still with us to this day. And then we got this dreaded phone call and letter from APD saying that the nuisance and abatement department, and they said, hey, look, we need to
you
meet with
fly
you
down.
guys. And at this point, Raj and I are coming in like, well, what is this about? You know?
Medical professionals. We had no idea.
We had no
Right.
idea.
We walked in a room, this large table, and all these police officers and everything. I think there was
Like the chief.
10, 12
yeah.
people in there. It was very intimidating for
Wow.
us. And we sat down, and they just, basically, Bundaberg is such a rough area.
Yeah.
The type of clientele that we were getting. So that's what the complaint was about. And we had no idea of this. We
Right.
just, the hotel's doing well. We're doing numbers. That's all we're seeing.
Yeah,
We're not
sure,
seeing the actual
sure.
day-to-day operations.
So we worked super close with APD and the detectives and the nuisance and abatement department, and cleaned up
Yeah.
as much as we could, right?
Wow.
They just hopped to
And
another hotel. I mean, that whole area is.
It's
Yeah.
such a bad area.
Right.
It's sad. It's
Yeah.
super sad. And then after some time, I started to get even more homesick. I didn't like the weather. And then his parents were like, hey, look, guys, we want to move to India because we can't take the cold weather anymore. And I turned to Raj and I'm like, if they go to India, what are we going to, what's keeping us here?
Right.
I really want to be closer to family.
Yeah.
And that's where in 2012, we decided to sell the dental practice, sell our house, and uplift me, Raj, and the girls to
Wow.
Austin.
Austin made sense.
Because we had a property here.
Our family's in Dallas.
Yeah.
And Austin's just far enough away that we get a little
Yeah.
space,
Yeah.
Healthy
and
space.
yeah, and we had this hotel there, so it just and warm weather. It's what my parents needed.
Yeah. That
We
makes
moved
sense.
at the
But we
perfect time.
never moved with the idea that we would expand on hotel. We just maybe there's an
No.
opportunity there. I thought I would be doing dentistry here,
Okay.
to be honest with you.
Okay.
And I did.
Yeah.
While we still had that one, I was still doing it
Yeah.
maybe 4 days a week or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were.
Okay.
And then came a point where 2 more properties came under
So when we
foreclosure.
moved here, we decided, hey, look, if we're going to learn this,
Yeah.
we're going to live at the motel. We're going to really soak into this, lean into it. And so it was me, Raj, and our 2 girls were, I think, 6 and 7 at the time,
Yeah.
2013.
If that.
And, we moved into this motel in
my
Runberg.
God.
We literally slept in one room. Our closets were cardboard boxes.
For 22 months.
My kids were exposed to drugs, prostitution, gunshots.
They viewed it.
Yeah.
It
They
was
were exposed to it.
Cable TV outside our
Yeah,
window.
they were
pretty
exposed
much.
to it. And, we worked very closely with the manager, learned the ins and the outs of the property, from front desk to housekeeping to maintenance.
Yeah.
And like I said, it was a blessing for us to really learn.
Yeah. Just the transition from the stability to
Yeah.
that for y'all.
No,
you're
that's
like, this
what it
is
was.
just what makes sense next. It's like
And we did this for some time because then we ended up getting another motel a little bit further down the street
On August 12th, 2013,
Okay.
we purchased 2 other smaller motels.
Okay. Yeah.
One was in Austin, one was in
They
Houston.
were Wyndham Baymonts.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
what they were called. Same
Baymont
day.
Inns. And, I said, okay, I'll handle the Austin one. You handle the Houston one.
Yeah.
And because we own them, we open them the same day.
Right.
And the way the properties work is the minute we take over ownership from the previous owner, it is like the flip of a
At
switch.
midnight,
Wow.
they pulled the La Quinta plug and our computer started, and that's it.
That's
Yeah.
it. And they
we
walk
have
away.
no experience, anything. I still, when I look back at that first week,
We're like, how do we do it?
Did you guys sleep? Did you?
Well, no, that night we also get a call from Houston that our manager that we had hired to start opening that up isn't coming anymore. So we had no manager there. We had nobody to take over the hotel. So we had in Deming, New Mexico, I had this one woman that was I had taken over property just for short term. So I flew her over there just to open that hotel up at midnight, so she could get the computer running, and that's how we started. And so then we moved from this hotel into that other hotel.
Okay.
And
Not even hotel, motel.
motel, yeah.
Yeah.
And we did the same thing, and it was doing terrible. I mean, it was only 23%
Oh.
occupancy, and we just said, "Oh my God, what kind of decision did we make?" And then
And
finally,
we're still learning through it.
Motel 6 came to us and said, "We want to convert this to a Motel 6." And we said, "Well, what can we lose?
Yeah.
If it doesn't work, we sell it."
We just switched up flags.
I think it was
New Year's
Day.
Eve.
It jumped from 23% to 75% occupancy
Overnight.
in that
Okay.
window.
And so we thought,
Because of
oh my
fluke.
gosh, maybe this is because it's New Year's Eve and
Is
you
that
know it's Austin.
2014?
2013.
13? Okay.
So 13
okay.
going into 14, yes.
Okay.
And believe it or not, the first year it never dipped below 75% occupancy.
Wow.
That was amazing.
Long story short, we started there, and now we're running these 2 Baymont Inns, converted it to Motel 6. We, sold some, gained some, sold some, gained some, and then finally, we said, okay, we're ready for the next step, like the dream that we never thought we could do.
Start from
Penetrating a
scratch.
Hilton or a Marriott, or even building one. We
Yeah.
would never even think to build one.
Right.
And at that time, Hilton, like I said, was it's a difficult flag to get.
Yeah.
Either you have to be in the know or you have to own, other properties within the family to get that, application, just to get
They
the
were always
application.
loyal to their previous owners.
But the gentleman who was in charge of giving the applications for all of the South was, he was an older guy. He was a bit jaded and didn't have, the best friendships with a lot of people.
Okay.
And I remember my uncle saying like, oh, good luck. Even my cousins who are very, successful developers, good luck getting a hold of him. He's not going to return your
So I
calls.
think a couple of years, Thorold had emails
It was about a year and a
things
half,
like that. And
and-
we finally got an email saying, I'm going to be in town in Austin. Let's meet for lunch. And then we
Yeah.
came into that meeting, not just for lunch.
Oh, guns blazing.
We had
Yeah.
and this is me. My part is like
Yep.
getting organized and getting all these things. So we put a binder together with everything, all the hotel locations around this area, land, 5 different pieces of land. Banks were ready to give us a loan, our financial statement, everything in a binder ready to go. So we presented to him at lunch.
We're sitting at this Mexican restaurant here in Cedar
And he
Park.
was awesome
Okay.
with us, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, he was
Oh, he was
amazing.
such
All
a
the
nice
stories we had
guy.
heard, it wasn't.
It wasn't.
true at
Yeah.
all. No.
Not 1% of
And
it.
I think also our professionalism too.
Yeah.
It was refreshing for him.
Right. Brought
Um,
a guard down even.
Yeah. And he ordered margaritas and everything. We're laughing, and it was just so organic. I mean,
Yeah.
it was like we had known him for quite some time. And we finished, and I said, "Oh, well, this meeting went well." I was thinking in my head, and he goes, "All right." And so I thought, he's like, "Okay, we'll get back to you sometime." He said, "Let's go and take a look at some of these sites."
Yeah.
Oh my God. So we travel out, and once we finished, we showed him the sites. He gave us 2 applications, one for each site for Hilton
Yeah.
True, which
Yeah.
was a new brand that came up. So getting the application is about 85 to 90% of it.
Okay.
You can't just download an application for Hilton.
No.
Right.
That, he has to give it to you.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
and then once that's done, then they approve it by looking at the land location and things like that. So anyway, we got the flag, and after that, we built 2 hotels in Pflugerville. It's a dual brand, Home to Hilton. We're building 2 more now in Cedar Park.
Wow.
So yeah, so.
So did you guys acquire any, or you built each?
The
all the
last,
Hiltons?
Yeah.
We'll
the
have
last 5 we've built.
We'll have 5 Hiltons and
Yeah.
3 Motel 6s when we're
That's
done.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so amazing. Yeah. And you said you sit in on the board for.
I do.
True
So
Hilton.
I sit on the Hilton True Owners Advisory Council. I've been on there since, I want to say 2018 or 2017. And then I sit on the Motel 6 Studio 6 board,
Yeah.
Owner Advisory Council too. I still think I'm the only female on the True
Hilton
one.
True side, yeah.
So impressive.
I think for G6 I was the first female.
Wow. It's an unbelievable journey for me from we're switching careers, this motel in Nuremberg to this dream of a Hilton. Now sitting in on the board, I mean, just
Yeah.
it's in a really relatively short period of time when you think about it.
Yeah.
I'm sure it didn't feel short in
No,
moments,
it is a
but
relatively
when you
short
think about
period of
how
time.
quick all of that developed.
Yeah. No, I mean, definitely, and even with our friends, it's hard work, right?
Yeah.
And also a little bit of luck and opportunity comes along.
Right.
and Both
Absolutely.
of them to come together. That's
Right.
the key.
Yeah.
But you just never know when that opportunity is coming. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think there are a lot of things that are transferable and inspiring about y'all's story, even if people aren't watching this hoping to own their own, hotel
Yeah.
at some point in the future. Like the learning how to learn, like as an example, whatever
Yes.
your dream may be, big or small to you, that barrier of what
And-
I don't know and can I learn it is like,
And regardless of the education, right?
100%. Yeah.
Regardless of the education, you
Yeah.
should be able to teach yourself and you could do it.
Yeah.
And I think it's also important. So education, the other thing is, one thing that my dad said is education's the one thing nobody can steal from you.
Yeah.
You could always fall back on it.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I can't stress that enough.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes so much sense. Is there any other pieces that you guys would add, kind of looking back on your stories, looking back on these last 10 years, that you're like, whatever the dream may be somebody's chasing after, that you would say, man, you've got to keep this front and center?
I think being your own boss is a big deal.
Yeah.
As big of a risk as it is to own your own business, the rewards are there too.
Thor's dad always said, don't let anyone else hold your pink slip, you know? So.
Well, let's close this way. I like to usually ask people, like, what inspires you today? Because I'm thinking you've made the career switch. You are your own bosses now. You've been successful. What today is inspiring you guys to show up every day and take the next step?
For me, it's my girls.
Yeah.
It's super important for me to have them see that their mom, a woman, could do pretty much anything that I set my mind to.
Wow.
And having that work ethic. So that's my biggest inspiration, is the girls.
Absolutely, same here.
Yeah.
I mean, for them to see that, what we do, what we've gone through, and what we've accomplished firsthand, and you know, we're planning on building a hotel here in Cedar Park, and that is going to be my biggest joy, because that's something that the girls will see every time they drive in and out, you know, and the other hotels are a little bit further away, so they don't really see it, but it's just a constant reminder of, they can see it as it progresses from ground up. And, you know.
For Raj, this is a really big deal, right? Because he grew up with nothing.
Yeah.
And, you know, he was the guy who would cut out, what is that symbol? The little
Woodhouse.
alligator.
Yeah.
He would, you know,
glue it onto your shirt.
glue it onto his
everything,
shirt,
yeah.
you know, because, you know, so he values those types of things where, you know, having his girls being able to drive that by a hotel and say like, oh, this is my parents.
Yeah.
For me,
Not so much the physical thing, just that we ground up. We, you know, the hard work. That's what means more to me.
Yeah, they
Just,
saw the
like,
journey.
It's not the actual physical property, but just the fact that this is what hard work can get you. You know, and that's another thing that drives me, is just remembering where I came from, what I had. I mean, you know, just even now, still going out in the backyard and seeing that I have a pool, I'm still amazed by it, you know, that I have it, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, sharing it with friends and family too.
Right. Well, it seems like that humility has stuck with you, even when you were talking about sitting on the other side of her parents and being inspired by, like, wow, having more doesn't have to change the way you see a human on the other side of you.
Absolutely,
it seems like that's something you both still have, and it's very impressive. No, I appreciate that. I've appreciated the whole story, the whole conversation, and there was stuff that was even a surprise to me, which I love. So, for real, thank you guys for taking the time for me, and
thank
I'll take
you.
you guys home with us during the process. It's been awesome.